Australia, a land of striking contrasts and boundless mystery, is often seen as a haven for those in search of the unexplained. Vast deserts stretch for miles under the scorching sun, while dense forests and rugged coastlines hide secrets that have intrigued the curious for centuries. Beyond its natural beauty and cultural richness, Australia has quietly earned a reputation as a hotspot for strange phenomena, particularly those related to UFOs and alien encounters. While the United States and Europe often take center stage in global UFO discourse, Australia has quietly amassed a history filled with credible sightings, strange happenings, and unsolved mysteries. But what is it about this vast, isolated land that seems to attract such otherworldly phenomena? To the casual observer, Australia might seem like a serene, uninhabited land, an ideal place for a peaceful life away from the modern complexities of urban existence. However, beneath its tranquil surface, there lies an enigmatic world that's home to a remarkable number of UFO sightings and alien-related encounters. From the southernmost tip of Tasmania to the red heart of the outback, reports of UFOs, strange lights in the sky, and encounters with unexplainable beings have dotted the landscape for decades. This vast land, so far removed from the rest of the world, has become a focal point for alien enthusiasts and researchers alike, who believe that the strange happenings in this remote region may hold the key to understanding a phenomenon that has captivated humanity for generations. For years, the UFO phenomenon has sparked a range of emotions: fascination, fear, and even skepticism. Those who are drawn to the possibility of life beyond our planet find themselves constantly searching for evidence, while skeptics dismiss these stories as mere hoaxes or fabrications. The truth, however, lies somewhere in between. Australia's alien mysteries present a compelling case for the existence of phenomena that cannot easily be explained by conventional means. The stories that have emerged from this land are not only numerous, but are also supported by credible witnesses, farmers, soldiers, pilots, and everyday people, who, without apparent reason, have experienced something beyond the realm of ordinary reality. In the quiet rural communities of Australia, where the vastness of the land allows for unbroken starlit skies and perfect conditions for observing the heavens, residents have long whispered of strange lights, inexplicable objects in the sky, and encounters with beings that defy the imagination. These reports are not limited to a single region, but span the entire continent, suggesting that whatever is happening is far more widespread than previously thought. Yet, for all the intrigue these sightings generate, Australia remains largely off the radar for mainstream UFO research. Why? In a world where UFOs are often the subject of sensational media reports and documentaries, is Australia so consistently overlooked? The answer, in part, may lie in the country's isolation. Australia's geographical positioning on the edge of the world gives it a certain mystique. Its vast distances and remote regions make it an ideal location for encounters with extraterrestrial phenomena. Some theorists even suggest that the country's isolation has made it a prime target for extraterrestrial visitation, as the sheer expanse of the land offers the perfect cover for UFOs to operate without being easily detected. Meanwhile, the rugged terrain of the outback, with its harsh climate and sparse population, adds a layer of mystery that heightens the allure of these encounters. The sense of isolation that permeates Australia's landscapes creates an eerie atmosphere, which only deepens when the inexplicable occurs. It's as if the land itself invites a sense of the unknown, whether it is strange light flickering over the horizon or an unmarked craft descending into the desert. The most intriguing aspect of Australia's UFO encounters is not just the sheer volume of sightings, but the diversity of the individuals who report them. These are not simply the stories of eccentric individuals or fringe groups. The witnesses are credible and often come from walks of life that lend authenticity to their accounts. Farmers, who spend long hours in solitude on their properties, have reported seeing strange lights hovering over their fields. Pilots, with years of training in observing the skies, have encountered unidentified flying objects that defy all known aviation principles. Police officers and military personnel, too, have made similar reports, which only adds to the credibility of the phenomenon. When such individuals, respected members of their communities, claim to have witnessed something extraordinary, it becomes harder to dismiss their accounts as mere fantasy. Yet, despite these credible reports, mainstream media in Australia and around the world have often been hesitant to dive too deeply into the subject. UFO sightings, especially those that involve credible witnesses, are still treated with a great deal of skepticism, and there is a general reluctance to explore the topic in any meaningful way. This reluctance has led many to believe that there might be a concerted effort to suppress information or downplay the significance of these encounters. After all, what would the world's governments stand to gain from keeping such phenomena under wraps? If the reports of UFO sightings are true, then the implications are staggering. Would the revelation of extraterrestrial life radically alter the course of human history? Would it change the way we view our place in the universe? It's these kinds of questions that keep researchers, both amateur and professional, drawn to Australia's alien mysteries. For decades, UFO enthusiasts have traveled to the farthest reaches of the continent, investigating reports and interviewing witnesses in an attempt to piece together the truth behind the phenomena. This section will explore the nature of these investigations, highlighting the challenges and successes that have emerged over the years. From early unsophisticated investigations to modern-day scientific efforts using advanced technology, the quest to uncover the truth about Australia's UFO encounters has been ongoing. Perhaps what makes these mysteries even more intriguing is the psychological aspect of the encounters. While many people dismiss UFO sightings as mere misidentifications or figments of imagination, there are those who argue that the experience of encountering something truly unknown may be far more complex. The psychology of the witnesses is a critical component in understanding these phenomena. How do people process these experiences? What motivates them to come forward with their stories? How does encountering something as inexplicable as a UFO affect one's perception of reality? These are the kinds of questions that continue to fascinate both researchers and casual observers alike. As the script progresses, we will delve deeper into the various reports and stories that have come out of Australia. Each encounter adds to the mystery, and each one provides a clue that might bring us closer to understanding what is truly happening in the skies above this mysterious land. But while the search for answers continues, there's a sense of wonder and excitement that permeates every investigation, every theory, and every story. In Australia, the mysteries are not just about what we see in the sky. They're about our desire to understand the unknown, to reach beyond the boundaries of our earthly existence, and to uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the night. This introduction sets the stage for the deeper exploration of Australia's hidden alien encounters, preparing the audience to journey through time, across vast landscapes, and into the very heart of one of the world's most intriguing mysteries. As the story unfolds, we will learn that the answers may be closer than we think, or perhaps even more elusive than we can imagine. For now, we can only wonder and wait. The story of UFOs in Australia is not a modern phenomenon. Long before the term flying saucer was coined or the first official UFO reports were filed in the mid-20th century, the people of Australia had been witnessing strange lights and unexplained phenomena in the skies. These early accounts, however, were not often framed in terms of extraterrestrials or alien visitors. Instead, they were deeply rooted in the rich mythology and traditions of Australia's indigenous cultures. The connection between sky beings and UFOs offers a fascinating and often overlooked angle to the study of Australian alien encounters, blending ancient beliefs with modern mysteries. For tens of thousands of years, Indigenous Australians have looked to the stars for guidance, with the night sky playing a central role in their cultural, spiritual, and practical lives. The stars themselves were not just distant suns or celestial bodies. They were living entities, linked to stories of creation and transformation. Many Aboriginal groups across Australia have myths and legends about beings that descended from the heavens, beings that traveled in the sky, or beings that lived in the stars. These sky beings, sometimes referred to as star people, are described in ways that eerily resemble modern UFO encounters. The ancient Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, often passed down orally through generations, speak of encounters with celestial entities who came to Earth in craft-like vessels. These stories are deeply ingrained in the spiritual fabric of indigenous Australian culture and offer a fascinating historical context for modern UFO sightings. One of the most prominent examples is the Aboriginal creation myth of Baim, known as the Sky Father. Baim, a creator deity, is said to have descended from the sky to create the world and its people. In some stories, Baim is depicted as coming down in a fire stick or flaming spear, which could easily be interpreted as a description of a UFO or an alien spacecraft. The similarities between these ancient descriptions of celestial beings and modern UFO sightings are striking and suggest that the idea of visitors from the sky may have been a part of the Australian consciousness for far longer than previously realized. Aboriginal rock art, scattered across Australia, also contains images that some researchers believe resemble UFOs or extraterrestrial beings. These ancient paintings and carvings often depict enigmatic figures with large heads, elongated limbs, and oval-shaped bodies, which bear a striking resemblance to the classic gray aliens described in contemporary UFO encounters. While many scholars argue that these images are symbolic or spiritual in nature, others suggest that they may be a form of ancient storytelling, preserving accounts of encounters with beings from other worlds. The presence of these strange depictions in rock art, some of which dates back thousands of years, raises the intriguing question: could ancient Australians have had encounters with visitors from the stars long before the modern era? While indigenous beliefs lay the groundwork for the concept of extraterrestrial visitors, it wasn't until the mid-20th century that UFO sightings in Australia began to gain widespread attention. The 1940s and 1950s saw a significant increase in UFO reports globally, with Australia being no exception. These reports, however, were met with skepticism by both the public and the authorities. In 1947, a man named Kenneth Arnold famously reported seeing 9 saucer-like objects flying at high speed near Mount Rainier in Washington state, an event that sparked the modern UFO phenomenon. Within a few years, similar reports began to surface in Australia, particularly in rural and remote areas. One of the earliest and most famous UFO sightings in Australia occurred in 1954 near the town of Westall, in Victoria. The incident became known as the Westall UFO case, and it remains one of the most enduring mysteries in Australian UFO history. On April 6, 1954, over 200 students and teachers at the Grangehorse Primary School watched as a strange flying object, described as a silver, disc-shaped craft, hovered in the sky before disappearing into the distance at high speed. Multiple witnesses reported seeing the object, and many of them claimed to have been chased by military aircraft shortly after the event. The case was briefly covered by the press, but it was quickly dismissed by authorities, who offered no official explanation. The witnesses, however, were adamant that what they saw was not of earthly origin. This event marked the beginning of a pattern that would repeat itself in the decades that followed. UFO sightings reported by credible witnesses, but met with official indifference or outright dismissal. The 1960s and 1970s saw a continued rise in UFO sightings across Australia, particularly in rural areas where the vast, open skies made it easier for people to spot strange objects. These reports were often accompanied by detailed descriptions of the object's movements and behavior, suggesting that the phenomenon was not merely the result of misidentifications or hoaxes. Some witnesses described seeing objects that could hover in place, move at incredible speeds, or change direction abruptly, characteristics that defy conventional aerodynamics. The sheer variety of sightings, combined with the consistency of descriptions across different witnesses and locations, led many to believe that these encounters could not be easily explained away as natural phenomena or military activity. One of the most intriguing aspects of UFO sightings in Australia is the location of many of these encounters. Remote areas of the outback, with their sparse population and minimal light pollution, have long been associated with mysterious phenomena. The clear, unimpeded skies above these regions have made them ideal places for UFO sightings, with witnesses reporting strange lights and objects moving erratically across the night sky. In the 1970s, for example, A series of sightings were reported by a group of farmers in the small town of Tully, Queensland. The witnesses described seeing a disc-shaped craft hovering over a nearby lake before suddenly disappearing beneath the water. The Tully incident became famous not just for the sighting itself, but also for the discovery of a strange, circular imprint left in the grass near the lake, which some researchers believed could have been caused by a UFO landing. The Australian government, much like its counterparts in other countries, has been hesitant to address the growing number of UFO sightings. In the early years, there was little to no official acknowledgement of the phenomenon, and reports were often dismissed as the result of overactive imaginations, misidentifications, or hoaxes. However, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the government took a more active role in investigating UFO sightings, albeit under the guise of national security concerns. In 1994, the Australian government declassified a series of documents related to UFO investigations, many of which had been carried out by the Department of Defense. These documents revealed that, despite the official denials, the government had been tracking UFO sightings for decades, and had even established a protocol for responding to them. The release of these documents further fueled the belief that Australia's UFO phenomenon was being actively suppressed, and many researchers began to question why the government was so reluctant to address the issue openly. The psychological impact of these early sightings on Australian society cannot be understated. The notion of extraterrestrial life, or at the very least, the existence of phenomena that defy current scientific understanding, was a concept that many Australians had never seriously entertained before the UFO wave of the 1950s and 1960s. As reports of strange lights and craft continued to surface, public perception began to shift. While some dismissed the sightings as mere fantasy or hysteria, others began to entertain the possibility that something far more extraordinary was happening. The idea of alien visitation, once relegated to the realm of science fiction, began to take root in the popular imagination, influencing everything from literature and film to social and political discourse. By the time the 1970s rolled around, UFOs had become an undeniable part of Australian culture. No longer were they seen as strange anomalies that could be easily explained away. Instead, they were seen as a genuine mystery, one that touched the lives of ordinary Australians in ways that were difficult to ignore. In the years since, the question of what lies behind Australia's UFO sightings has continued to captivate researchers and enthusiasts alike. From indigenous sky spirits to modern-day alien encounters, the historical context of UFO sightings in Australia reveals a fascinating blend of ancient myth and contemporary mystery, one that has left an indelible mark on the nation's cultural landscape. As we continue to explore these hidden encounters, it's essential to remember that Australia's UFO history is not just a collection of isolated incidents, but part of a much larger, ongoing narrative. The history of UFOs in Australia is a rich tapestry, woven from stories of indigenous belief, early sightings, government secrecy, and cultural transformation, a story that continues to evolve with each new report, each new sighting, and each new theory that emerges. As the world watches from the comfort of cities and well-lit towns, the vast, sprawling outback of Australia remains an untamed wilderness, one where the ordinary meets the extraordinary. It's here, in the vast isolation and under the endless starlit sky, that some of the most compelling and unexplainable alien encounters have occurred. These are not the kind of experiences that can be easily dismissed, as they come from individuals with no vested interest in fame or fortune. They are everyday Australians, farmers, truck drivers, police officers, and military personnel, who have had their lives changed forever by the strange, otherworldly experiences they've encountered. And their stories, often told in hushed tones, share a common thread: a deep, unsettling sense of having witnessed something that defies all logic, something that cannot be ignored. One of the most notable and well-documented UFO sightings in the Australian outback occurred in 1966, near the small town of Tully, Queensland. A group of local farmers were going about their daily routines when they witnessed a bizarre sight. Describing it as a flying saucer, the witnesses reported seeing a silver disc-shaped object hovering over a nearby swamp. According to their accounts, The craft remained stationary for several minutes before suddenly darting off at an incredible speed, leaving a strange mark in the vegetation below. The witnesses were not only shocked by the sighting, but also by the inexplicable pattern that was left in the grass, a circular impression that seemed to suggest the craft had hovered just above the ground. It wasn't long before news of the sighting spread, and the area became the focal point for both local and international interest. The Tully incident, while one of the most well-known, is far from an isolated case. Throughout Australia, countless other accounts of UFO sightings in remote areas, many of which involve multiple witnesses, have emerged. In many of these cases, the objects seen in the sky were described as having unusual properties, hovering silently, moving erratically, or changing shape. Some witnesses have reported seeing these objects glow with an otherworldly light, while others have noted how they seem to defy the laws of physics by performing maneuvers that conventional aircraft could not. Such descriptions have left researchers and enthusiasts puzzled. How is it that so many credible witnesses from all walks of life could report seeing the same strange phenomenon? What is it that connects these encounters, and why are they happening so frequently in Australia? For those who have witnessed these events, the experience is often deeply personal and transformative. Take, for example, the story of a farmer in New South Wales who, in the early 1970s, found himself staring up at the sky in disbelief. This man had been out working late in the fields when he noticed an unusual object high in the sky. Unlike the typical aircraft that he was accustomed to seeing, this object didn't move in a straight line. Instead, it zigzagged erratically, as though defying all known principles of aviation. The farmer, who was later interviewed about the experience, described how the object hovered silently before shooting off at an unimaginable speed. He said that the object was so bright it illuminated the entire field, casting strange shadows that seemed out of place in the night. Despite being a seasoned farmer with years of experience, he could not offer any conventional explanation for what he had witnessed. The experience left him shaken, and in the years that followed, he became increasingly curious about the phenomenon. It's not only farmers and rural residents who have had encounters with the unknown. In 1988, a group of police officers in the outback town of Wagga Wagga experienced something that would leave them questioning everything they knew about the world. While on patrol in the remote region, the officers noticed strange lights in the sky. Initially, they assumed the lights might be from an aircraft or a helicopter. But as they continued to observe, they realized that the lights weren't behaving like any aircraft they had ever seen. The lights moved in an unnatural pattern, zigzagging, pausing, and then changing direction with incredible speed. The police officers, trained to observe and analyze their surroundings, were left baffled by what they were seeing. After several minutes, the lights vanished into the night, leaving the officers in stunned silence. They later reported the sighting to local authorities, but the official response was one of skepticism, as was typical of UFO reports at the time. However, the incident had a profound impact on the officers, and it remains a subject of discussion to this day. Then there's the case of a truck driver traveling across the Nullarbor Plain in the early 1990s. This long, desolate stretch of highway, which connects the east and west coasts of Australia, is known for its isolation and sparse population. As the driver made his way through the dark, endless expanse of the outback, he noticed a strange light in the distance. At first he thought it was a distant vehicle, but as he drew closer, the light became more defined and started to behave erratically. The truck driver described the light as a glowing, pulsating orb that seemed to hover just above the ground. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, darting back and forth across the horizon before vanishing into the distance. The driver, who had years of experience on the road, was certain he had seen something that didn't belong. He later reported the incident to his company, but no explanation was ever given. Once again, the experience left the witness with more questions than answers. Such personal accounts, many of which have been recorded through interviews or documented in UFO databases, are not isolated incidents, but part of a growing pattern. They share common elements: objects that move in ways that defy the laws of physics, lights that behave unpredictably, and encounters that leave witnesses with a sense of awe, fear, or confusion. What makes these accounts particularly compelling is not just the consistency of the descriptions, but the credibility of the witnesses. These are not people seeking attention or fame. They are everyday individuals, often from highly skeptical backgrounds, who are left with the realization that they have experienced something beyond the ordinary. They are not looking for answers, but simply sharing what they saw, in the hope that others will understand. In addition to these first-hand experiences, there are also accounts from military personnel and trained observers who have encountered similar phenomena. Pilots, for example, have reported sightings of UFOs while flying over Australia's vast outback. One well-known case involves an Australian pilot who, while flying over the outback in the 1970s, observed a strange light that appeared to follow his plane for several minutes. The light, he reported, maintained a consistent speed and altitude, mirroring the pilot's movements, before suddenly darting off into the distance. This encounter was one of many reported by military and civilian pilots who have witnessed similar phenomena while flying over remote regions of Australia. What is it that makes these encounters so pervasive in the Australian outback? Is it simply the result of more people living in isolated areas, where sightings are more likely to be reported? Or is there something else at play, something more mysterious and perhaps even otherworldly? The common thread that ties all these stories together is a profound sense of having witnessed something that defies explanation. For those who have had these encounters, the experience is not something they can easily forget or dismiss. It is an event that stays with them, often for the rest of their lives, leaving them with a sense of wonder, curiosity, and sometimes even fear. In many ways, these personal experiences form the backbone of the ongoing mystery of Australia's UFO phenomenon. While the government and media may have downplayed or ignored the subject, the countless individuals who have witnessed strange lights and unexplained phenomena continue to push the boundaries of what is possible. These encounters, when taken together, suggest that something extraordinary is happening in the skies above Australia. Whether it's the result of extraterrestrial visitation, military experimentation, or some other explanation, one thing is certain. The personal accounts of those who have seen the unknown form an integral part of the larger puzzle that continues to captivate researchers and enthusiasts alike. As we move further into the investigation of Australia's hidden alien encounters, the importance of these eyewitness accounts cannot be overstated. They are the key to understanding the scope and scale of the phenomenon, and they offer us a glimpse into the experiences of those who have had their worlds forever altered by the presence of something truly unknown. These stories may never provide all the answers, but they serve as an essential reminder that the search for the truth is a journey that must include the voices of those who have seen what others may never see. The subject of UFOs and alien encounters in Australia has not only captured the attention of the general public and passionate researchers, but also piqued the interest, and in some cases, the concern of government agencies. The role of the Australian government in addressing, acknowledging, and at times, attempting to suppress or downplay UFO reports has been a complex and evolving one. While UFO sightings have often been met with skepticism by the public and media, government reports, particularly those that were once classified, reveal a more intricate relationship between the phenomenon and official institutions. Over the years, this relationship has shifted from outright denial and silence to the reluctant acknowledgement of unexplained events, signaling a slow yet palpable change in how the government views the UFO phenomenon. Australia's government, much like those of other countries, was initially dismissive of the UFO reports that began to surface in the 1950s and 1960s. During this period, UFO sightings were often treated as sensational or fringe events, with little to no formal response or investigation. Reports from the public were frequently dismissed as hoaxes, misidentifications of conventional aircraft, or natural phenomena such as meteors or weather balloons. The widespread skepticism of UFOs was mirrored by the media, which often ridiculed sightings as mere fantasy. This disregard for the UFO phenomenon continued well into the 1970s and 1980s, despite the increasing number of credible witnesses and documented incidents. However, in the early 1990s, a shift began to occur. As UFO sightings continued to be reported across Australia, and as media coverage of these sightings became more widespread, the government could no longer afford to ignore the issue. For the first time, the Australian Department of Defence, DoD, acknowledged that UFO sightings were indeed being reported, and that the government was investigating these incidents. The key turning point came in 1994, when the Australian government declassified a series of UFO-related documents. These documents, many of which had previously been kept secret or were classified as confidential, revealed that the government had been aware of UFO sightings for decades and had, in fact, been tracking and investigating the phenomenon. The release of these documents shocked many, as it revealed that the government had quietly monitored UFO activity in Australia and had even conducted official investigations into the matter. The declassified documents included a variety of reports from government agencies, military personnel, and law enforcement officers who had encountered or observed UFOs. Some of these reports detailed sightings by military pilots, who described encountering objects that defied conventional flight patterns and could not be identified by radar. These reports not only confirmed the reality of UFO sightings, but also raised questions about the nature of these phenomena and whether they posed any potential threat to national security. Interestingly, the documents also revealed that Australian officials had been in communication with other governments, particularly the United States, about UFO sightings and related concerns, suggesting that the issue was not being dismissed entirely at the highest levels of government. One of the most significant aspects of these documents was their sheer volume and the variety of sightings they encompassed. The reports included encounters that took place in rural areas, urban centers, and even near military installations, with witnesses ranging from ordinary citizens to trained military personnel. In many cases, these sightings were accompanied by photographs or video footage, further adding to the credibility of the reports. The fact that these incidents had been documented by government agencies and were now being made available to the public marked a significant turning point in Australia's approach to the UFO phenomenon. Despite the declassification of these documents, however, the government's official stance on UFOs remained somewhat evasive. While the government acknowledged the existence of UFO sightings, it refrained from making any definitive statements regarding their origins or nature. The documents released in 1994 did not suggest that the Australian government had reached any conclusions about the nature of UFOs, nor did they speculate on whether the objects seen were of extraterrestrial origin. Instead, the government's position was that the sightings were either misidentifications of conventional aircraft, whether balloons or other explainable phenomena, or that they were unverified reports from unreliable sources. This reluctance to provide a definitive answer to the question of what UFOs actually are speaks to the larger issue of government secrecy and reluctance to fully disclose information about potential extraterrestrial phenomena. In the years that followed, the Australian government continued to release additional UFO-related documents, although the releases were often sporadic and limited in scope. The information provided was usually a summary of past reports, with little new insight or analysis. This limited disclosure, combined with the lack of a clear explanation or investigation into the causes of these sightings, has led many UFO researchers and enthusiasts to believe that the government is withholding critical information about the UFO phenomenon. This sentiment has been compounded by the fact that, despite the increasing volume of sightings and reports, the Australian government has not initiated any large-scale investigations or established official programs dedicated to studying UFOs. On the other hand, the media's portrayal of UFOs has played a significant role in shaping public perception of the phenomenon. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the media was largely dismissive of UFO sightings, often treating them as sensationalist or humorous stories. This portrayal reflected the general skepticism of the time, which saw UFOs as little more than the product of overactive imaginations or hoaxes. Stories of strange lights in the sky or sightings of flying saucers were often relegated to the back pages of newspapers, if they were covered at all, and were typically ridiculed in the press. This lack of serious media attention only reinforced the government's stance on UFOs, creating a cycle of silence and skepticism that persisted for many years. However, as the number of UFO sightings increased, and as more credible witnesses began to come forward, the media's portrayal of the phenomenon began to change. The 1970s and 1980s saw a shift in how UFOs were covered, with news outlets beginning to treat the subject with more seriousness. UFO sightings were no longer seen as mere curiosities. They were framed as legitimate mysteries that deserved investigation. As media outlets began to report on the growing number of UFO encounters, public interest in the phenomenon surged. The media's portrayal of UFOs became more nuanced, with some outlets calling for further government investigation and others speculating on the possible extraterrestrial origins of the phenomena. This shift in media coverage reflected a broader change in public attitudes toward UFOs. By the 1990s, the UFO phenomenon had entered mainstream consciousness. Documentaries, news reports, and even popular films began to explore the idea of extraterrestrial life and UFO encounters, further normalizing the discussion. This cultural shift created pressure for governments, including Australia's, to address the issue more openly. While the Australian government continued to avoid making definitive statements about the nature of UFOs, the media's increasing focus on the subject pushed the government to adopt a more cautious but transparent approach. The release of declassified documents and the gradual acknowledgement of the phenomenon's existence signaled a shift toward openness, although this openness remained guarded and somewhat limited. Despite this, there is a growing sense of frustration among researchers and the general public about the lack of concrete answers. The government's reluctance to provide a clear explanation for UFO sightings, coupled with the media's sometimes sensationalized coverage of the phenomenon, has led to a sense of ambiguity and uncertainty. UFO enthusiasts continue to argue that governments, including Australia's, are withholding critical information about the true nature of UFOs and their potential extraterrestrial origins. The increasing number of sightings and the growing interest in UFOs worldwide have only fueled this belief, leading many to call for greater transparency and government accountability. The question remains, why has the Australian government, like many others, been so reluctant to fully address the UFO phenomenon? Some argue that the government may be concerned about the implications of confirming the existence of extraterrestrial life, particularly in terms of national security and public reaction. Others believe that the government may be withholding information due to ongoing military or intelligence-related investigations that are still classified. Whatever the reason, the tension between official silence and public curiosity continues to be a central theme in the ongoing mystery of UFOs in Australia. As we move forward, it becomes clear that while the Australian government's stance on UFOs has evolved, there remains much to be understood about the full extent of its involvement in investigating these phenomena. The release of declassified documents has been an important step toward transparency, but it is only the beginning of a much larger story. The relationship between government, media, and the public on the subject of UFOs will continue to shape the way Australia and the world approaches the question of extraterrestrial life and the unexplained mysteries that persist in the skies above. The world of UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters is not only marked by the classic theories of alien visitation, but also by a host of alternative explanations that seek to understand the phenomenon from more unconventional and sometimes paranormal perspectives. While some researchers maintain that UFOs are simply spacecraft piloted by beings from another planet, others suggest that the phenomenon may be far more complex, possibly involving interdimensional entities, time travelers, or even supernatural forces. Australia, with its rich cultural history, vast landscapes, and unique geological formations, serves as an ideal backdrop for these alternative theories to thrive. As UFO sightings and paranormal encounters continue to be reported across the country, many have turned to these non-traditional explanations to make sense of the mysteries unfolding in the sky and beyond. One of the most popular alternative theories in UFO research is the idea of interdimensional beings. According to this theory, UFOs are not necessarily extraterrestrial craft from other planets, but rather vehicles or entities from alternate dimensions or parallel universes. Proponents of this idea argue that the strange properties of UFOs, such as their ability to warp spacetime, make sudden turns, or appear and disappear without warning, are better explained by the concept of interdimensional travel rather than conventional alien visitation. This theory suggests that UFOs are not simply flying objects from another star system, but represent a glimpse into other realms of existence. The theory further posits that these interdimensional beings may not be bound by the laws of physics as we understand them, allowing them to perform seemingly impossible feats that would be impossible for a physical spacecraft. The appeal of interdimensional theories is particularly strong in Australia, where the landscape is steeped in mystery and legend. For example, the rugged and isolated outback is often described as a place where the boundaries between the known and unknown seem to blur. Some UFO enthusiasts suggest that the unique energy fields and natural anomalies present in Australia's vast, uncharted regions may be linked to these interdimensional breaches. Could it be that the strange lights and flying objects observed by witnesses are not from outer space, but from another dimension entirely? And if these beings exist in other dimensions, what is their purpose for visiting our world? Another alternative theory that has gained traction in Australia is the notion that UFOs may be connected to time travel. This theory suggests that the objects being observed in the sky are not necessarily of extraterrestrial origin, but may instead be vehicles from the future. According to this hypothesis, advanced civilizations from the future, capable of manipulating time and space, have developed the technology to travel back to earlier points in history, possibly to study or alter the past. UFO sightings could, in this context, represent time travelers who are either unaware of their impact on the present or intentionally interacting with our world. The theory of time-traveling UFOs offers a compelling explanation for some of the more bizarre aspects of UFO encounters, such as the appearance of high-tech craft with capabilities that seem to defy current technological understanding. The allure of this theory is evident in many of the UFO sightings in Australia, where witnesses describe craft that appear to be from a distant future, with technology that far surpasses anything available today. Some accounts describe UFOs that glow with a pulsating light, others describe objects that seem to materialize out of thin air, and still others describe sightings of crafts that leave behind no trace, as though they simply vanish into another time. In the case of one famous UFO sighting near the town of Wycliffe Well in the Northern Territory, numerous witnesses reported seeing strange craft that seemingly moved between different time periods, sometimes appearing to be solid, and at other times fading in and out of view. Could these craft be travelers from the future, here to witness or even influence key events in our history? In addition to these more scientific theories, there are also explanations rooted in the realm of the paranormal. Some UFO researchers suggest that UFO sightings are, in fact, manifestations of otherworldly entities or supernatural forces that are not bound by the laws of physics or time. This theory blends the UFO phenomenon with concepts from folklore, mythology, and spiritual beliefs, suggesting that the lights and objects seen in the sky may not be physical in nature, but rather ethereal manifestations of beings from another plane of existence. These sky beings are sometimes described as possessing a non-physical or ghostly quality, which allows them to appear and disappear without leaving any trace. For example, many of the UFO sightings reported in remote parts of Australia are accompanied by reports of strange, unexplainable phenomena, such as electromagnetic disturbances, strange feelings of unease, or even altered states of consciousness among the witnesses. One particularly intriguing example of this type of encounter comes from the famous Calcite UFO sighting in the 1980s. Located in a remote area of New South Wales, Calcite is known for its beautiful, otherworldly landscapes, and it was here that a group of campers reported seeing a bright, glowing object in the sky that appeared to hover for several hours. What made this sighting so strange was not just the craft itself, but the eerie effects it had on the environment. The campers reported feeling an intense pressure in the air, as though the very fabric of reality had been altered. They also noted that their watches and electronic devices stopped working, and they experienced vivid, unsettling dreams after the encounter. Some investigators suggested that the UFO they had seen might have been more than just a physical object. It may have been an ethereal manifestation of some kind of energy or consciousness, interacting with the campers on a level that could not be explained by conventional physics. This idea of UFOs as paranormal entities is often tied to certain locations around Australia that are considered to be hotspots for strange activity. These locations, such as the outback, the forests of Tasmania, and the coastal regions of New South Wales, are often believed to possess unique energy fields or mystical properties that make them more prone to paranormal events. Some theorists suggest that the UFOs seen in these areas are not simply spacecraft or interdimensional travelers, but are instead tied to ancient spiritual forces that have been interacting with the land for thousands of years. The indigenous cultures of Australia, for example, have long held beliefs in sky spirits and celestial beings that descended from the stars, and some researchers argue that modern UFO sightings are a continuation of these ancient encounters with otherworldly forces. According to this view, the UFO phenomenon is not something new or foreign, but rather a continuation of an age-old connection between the land, its people, and the cosmos. Another popular paranormal theory involves the concept of extraterrestrial abductions, a phenomenon that has been reported in various parts of the world, including Australia. According to those who have experienced these encounters, UFOs are not merely seen flying overhead, but they actively engage with witnesses, sometimes taking them aboard their craft for mysterious purposes. These abduction experiences often involve vivid memories of being examined or studied by non-human entities, and they are sometimes accompanied by feelings of intense fear, disorientation, and helplessness. In Australia, there have been a number of well-documented cases where individuals report having been abducted or interacted with by UFO occupants, particularly in rural areas. These experiences often leave the witnesses with a sense of confusion or even trauma, and many are left searching for answers to the questions that their encounters have raised. Despite the growing number of alternative theories surrounding UFO sightings in Australia, there are still many who argue that these events can be explained by more conventional means. Skeptics often suggest that UFO sightings are the result of misidentifications, psychological phenomena, or hoaxes. Atmospheric conditions, such as weather balloons, aircraft reflections, or natural light distortions, are often cited as plausible explanations for strange lights in the sky. Others argue that the UFO phenomenon is a product of mass hysteria or cultural influence, with people interpreting ordinary events as extraordinary due to their exposure to media and popular culture. Nevertheless, the allure of alternative theories remains strong, especially in Australia, where the unexplained continues to captivate both locals and outsiders. As new sightings and encounters continue to be reported, these alternative explanations provide an intriguing way to understand the mysteries that unfold in the skies above. Whether it's interdimensional travelers, time travelers, supernatural forces, or extraterrestrial beings, the alternative theories offer a broad range of possibilities, each adding another layer of complexity to the ongoing mystery. For those who seek answers beyond the conventional, the UFO phenomenon remains an open field of exploration, offering endless opportunities to question, theorize, and imagine what may truly lie behind the strange lights and objects seen in the night sky. The UFO phenomenon in Australia, much like in other parts of the world, has not only been shaped by eyewitness accounts and government investigations, but has also deeply influenced Australian culture, art, literature, and even the national psyche. The idea of extraterrestrial life, of strange beings visiting our planet, has captivated the imagination of Australians for decades. From the remote regions of the outback to the bustling cities along the coast, UFO sightings have become part of the fabric of contemporary Australian life. But the impact of these experiences goes beyond the reports of strange lights in the sky. They have sparked debates, inspired creativity, and shaped the way many Australians view their place in the cosmos. The fascination with UFOs in Australian society can be traced back to the earliest reported sightings in the mid-20th century. During the 1950s and 1960s, as UFO sightings began to increase around the world, Australia found itself caught up in the global UFO craze. Newspapers and magazines, eager to report on any strange occurrences, began publishing stories about UFOs and alien encounters. The press coverage played a significant role in normalizing the idea of UFOs as more than just fantasy. For many Australians, the idea that extraterrestrial life could be visiting their own skies was a novel and compelling notion. The media's treatment of UFOs, although often sensationalized, helped to bring the phenomenon into the mainstream consciousness, sparking discussions in homes, schools, and workplaces across the country. The 1950s also marked the beginning of UFO-themed movies and television shows, which, along with popular literature, began to shape public perceptions of the phenomenon. Australian audiences, like their counterparts around the world, were introduced to the concept of flying saucers through films like The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and The War of the Worlds, 1953, which captivated the public imagination and turned the idea of extraterrestrial life into a shared cultural experience. These films presented UFOs as mysterious and often menacing visitors, embodying the fear of the unknown and the threat of invasion from distant worlds. While these portrayals were typically fictional, they contributed to a growing interest in the topic, encouraging Australians to speculate about the reality of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. As the UFO phenomenon continued to gain traction in Australia, it began to influence other areas of popular culture. In the 1960s and 1970s, UFO-themed music, television shows, and books began to emerge, further embedding the concept of UFOs into the national consciousness. One of the most notable examples of this cultural shift was the rise of alien contactee stories, which focused on the idea of human beings being contacted by extraterrestrials. These stories often featured individuals who claimed to have had direct communication with aliens or even to have been taken aboard UFOs. While some of these accounts were met with skepticism, others found their way into mainstream media, sparking curiosity and fascination among the Australian public. As the cultural landscape began to shift, the boundary between the real and the imagined became increasingly blurred, as people began to question the nature of the UFO phenomenon and its connection to Australian society. UFO sightings also began to influence the way Australians viewed their relationship with the natural world. For many, the idea of UFOs visiting the Australian outback, the vast, remote region that is often associated with mystery and isolation, took on a special significance. The outback, with its rugged terrain and sparse population, had long been a place where the extraordinary was more likely to occur, and UFO sightings seemed to reinforce this sense of otherworldliness. The outback became a focal point for UFO enthusiasts, researchers, and tourists alike, drawn to its reputation as a hotspot for unexplained phenomena. Stories of strange lights hovering over the desolate landscape, unexplained craft sightings near the region's isolated communities, and the eerie silence of the desert at night all contributed to the outback's growing mystique as a place where the unknown might reveal itself. This cultural fascination with UFOs was also reflected in Australian art and literature. Artists, writers, and filmmakers began to incorporate themes of alien contact, extraterrestrial life, and UFOs into their work, often exploring the tension between the known world and the vast, unexplored universe. The themes of isolation, mystery, and the unknown, which are so closely associated with the UFO phenomenon, resonated deeply within the context of Australia's own history and geography. Australia's unique position as both a large landmass and an island nation gave rise to a sense of isolation and vulnerability that was reflected in the portrayal of UFOs and alien encounters in popular culture. Australian writers, many of whom had been influenced by the global interest in UFOs, began to create their own stories of alien visitation, often weaving together elements of science fiction, fantasy, and the paranormal. Authors such as Patrick White, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and contemporaries like David Malouf and Peter Carey, incorporated themes of alienation, the unknown, and the search for identity in their works. While these authors did not necessarily write directly about UFOs, their exploration of themes like isolation, mystery, and the limits of human knowledge mirrored the fascination with the unexplained that was growing in Australian society. Many of these writers also turned their attention to the complex relationship between humans and the unknown, exploring how the existence of extraterrestrial life might challenge existing paradigms and alter the way humans view themselves and their place in the universe. Australian film and television also played a significant role in shaping the cultural landscape surrounding UFOs. Films like The Tracker, 2002, and The Last Wave, 1977, are prime examples of how Australian cinema has used themes of mystery, the supernatural, and alien encounters to explore deeper questions about human nature and the environment. The Australian film industry, often drawing from the country's unique geography and culture, has consistently portrayed UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters in ways that resonate with both local audiences and global viewers. These films often emphasize the tension between humanity's desire to explore the unknown and the fear of what might be discovered. The combination of Australia's vast wilderness and its position on the edge of the known world provides a perfect backdrop for stories that confront humanity's existential questions about life beyond Earth. In addition to the influence of UFOs in art, literature, and cinema, the UFO phenomenon also led to the rise of various subcultures and communities in Australia. UFO enthusiasts, researchers, and conspiracy theorists formed groups dedicated to investigating sightings, sharing experiences, and promoting awareness of the phenomenon. The Australian UFO Research Network, AUFORN, for example, has been instrumental in documenting sightings and supporting investigations into UFO encounters across the country. These organizations have provided a platform for individuals who believe they have had encounters with extraterrestrial beings or have witnessed unexplained aerial phenomena, allowing them to share their experiences with like-minded individuals. These groups have also contributed to a growing body of research into the UFO phenomenon, often working to debunk hoaxes, verify sightings, and explore alternative explanations for the strange events reported by witnesses. In recent years, the cultural influence of UFOs in Australia has been amplified by the rise of social media and the Internet. Online communities and forums dedicated to UFO research and paranormal phenomena have given Australians a space to discuss their sightings and theories, while also connecting them to global communities of UFO enthusiasts. This digital age has provided an unprecedented opportunity for individuals to share their experiences and collaborate on investigations, further deepening the cultural impact of UFOs on Australian society. Online platforms like YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook have become spaces where Australians can share videos, photographs, and personal accounts of UFO encounters, sparking conversations and fostering a sense of camaraderie among those who believe in the phenomenon. The cultural impact of UFOs in Australia is also evident in the rise of UFO-related tourism. Towns like Wycliffe Well in the Northern Territory, widely regarded as Australia's UFO capital, have embraced their association with extraterrestrial sightings by attracting tourists who are eager to experience the phenomenon firsthand. Visitors flock to these towns for UFO-themed events, exhibitions, and guided tours, further cementing the place of UFOs in the country's cultural landscape. The tourism industry has recognized the potential of UFOs as a unique draw, and local businesses have capitalized on the growing interest in the phenomenon by offering UFO-related merchandise, accommodations, and experiences. The influence of UFOs on Australian society is undeniable. From shaping the national imagination to inspiring artistic expression and cultural movements, the UFO phenomenon has become an integral part of Australia's modern identity. As sightings continue to be reported, and as more people embrace the mystery of what lies beyond our world, the cultural significance of UFOs in Australia is only likely to grow. The question of whether extraterrestrial life exists remains unanswered, but one thing is clear. UFOs have become a cultural touchstone, provoking curiosity, imagination, and a sense of wonder that continues to capture the hearts and minds of Australians across the country.